Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The rain was coming down in sheets that night, one of those late autumn storms that seemed to wash the last hints of color from the world. I was curled up on the sofa, nursing a cup of cho-melt tea, and trying to get lost in an old black and white movie playing softly on the television. The house felt particularly quiet. Havo almost the way it always did when my son Michael was away at college. He'd been gone 2 years now, but some nights, like this one, the silence was louder than others. The wind howled a lonely tune around the eaves, and the rhythmic drumming of rain against the window panes was the only company I had. That and the flickering images on the screen, ghosts from another era. I must have drifted off for a moment, lulled by the storm and the warmth of the tea, because the sound that broke the quiet made me jump, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. It was a knock, not a tentative tap, but a firm, solid knock on the front door. My first thought was, who on earth could that be? It was past 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, and the weather was dreadful. Nobody just dropped by anymore. Certainly not this late, and especially not in this kind of downpour. Maybe someone's car broke down. My brow furrowed with mild concern mixed with a healthy dose of caution. I wasn't expecting anyone. Michael wasn't due home for weeks. I muted the television, the sudden silence amplifying the sound of the wind and rain, and listened intently. Another knock, just as firm as the first. Okay, definitely someone needing something. I smoothed down my sweater, took a deep breath, and walked through the dimly lit hallway to the front door. Hesitantly, I peered through the peel. Water distorted the view, but I could make out a tall figure huddled on the porch, shoulders hunched against the driving rain. It looked like a young man, his hair plastered to his forehead. He shifted, turning slightly, and my breath caught in my recognizing him. Took a second, the rain and the dim porch light playing tricks. But then it clicked. Alex, Michael's friend Alex. What in the world was he doing here? They'd been thick as thieves in high school, practically inseparable. Alex had spent countless afternoons and weekends at our house, raiding the fridge, talking about cars, dreaming about the future. He was a good kid, always polite, maybe a little quieter than Michael, more thoughtful, but I hadn't seen him in ages, not since they both went off to different colleges in different states. Why would he be knocking on my door now on a night like this? My mind raced through possibilities. Was Michael okay? Did something happen? A knot of maternal panic tightened in my stomach. I fumbled with the locks, my fingers suddenly clumsy, and pulled the heavy door open just enough to talk. The wind immediately whipped cold, wet air into the hallway, carrying the scent of rain and damp earth. "Alex?" I asked, my voice sounding a little shaky even to my own ears. "Is that you? What's wrong? Is Michael all right?" He looked up, startled, water dripping from his chin. His eyes, usually bright and full of easy confidence, looked shadowed, lost somehow. He was soaked through, his jacket clinging to him, and he seemed smaller than I remembered despite being just as tall. "Mrs. Henderson," he began, his voice rough, almost hesitant. "Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you this late, especially in this weather." He gestured vaguely at the storm raging behind him. "Is Michael?" "No, Michael's fine. As far as I know, I didn't mean to scare you." Relief washed over me, potent and immediate, but it was quickly replaced by confusion. "Oh, thank goodness," I breathed out. You gave me a start, showing up like this. Come in, you're drenched." I opened the door wider, stepping back to let him into the warmth of the hallway. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, glancing back into the dark, rainy street as if second-guessing himself before stepping over the threshold. He brought the chill of the night in with him, dripping onto the welcome mat. "Thank you," he murmured, avoiding my eyes for a moment, instead focusing on shuffling his wet sneakers on the mat. I didn't know where else to go." That last phrase hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. I closed the door, shutting out the storm, the deadbolt clicking shut with a sound that seemed too loud in a sudden stillness. The hallway felt small, confining with both of us standing there. I could see he was shivering slightly. "Goodness, Alex, you'll catch your death. Let me get you a towel. Come into the living room by the fire." I tried to keep my voice light, normal, pushing down the questions swirling in my head. Why was he here? Why did he look so undone? He followed me silently into the living room, the place where he and Michael had spent so many hours. I grabbed a thick bath towel from the linen closet and handed it to him. He took it gratefully, burying his face in it for a moment before starting to dry his hair and face. I turned away discreetly, pretending to busy myself by adding another log to the fireplace, coaxing the flames a little higher. The room was cozy, bathed in the soft glow of the fire and a single table lamp. Old family photos lined the mantelpiece, including several of Michael and Alex grinning goofily during their high school years. Seeing them now felt strangely potent. When I turned back, Alex had shed his wet jacket, draping it carefully over the back of a chair I had indicated away from the carpet. He was rubbing his arms, still looking chilled. "Can I get you something warm?" I offered. Hot chocolate. I think I might even have some instant coffee somewhere." He managed a small smile, the first I'd seen since he arrived. It didn't quite reach his eyes, but it was something. "Tea would be great, Mrs. Henderson. Thank you, Sarah." "Please," I corrected gently, as I always did. "You're not in high school anymore, Alex, and neither am I for that matter." He nodded, looking down at his hands. "Sarah, right? Sorry." I went into the kitchen, the familiar routine of filling the kettle and finding mugs grounding me slightly. My mind was still buzzing. He looked troubled, deeply so. It wasn't just the rain, it was something in his posture, the guarded look in his eyes. This wasn't the carefree Alex I remembered. This was a young man carrying a weight. I prepared 2 mugs of chamomile tea, the same kind I'd been drinking, adding a generous spoonful of honey to his. When I returned to the living room, he was standing by the fireplace, staring into the flames, lost in thought. The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. He looked older than his 21 years right then. I handed him the steaming mug, our fingers brushing briefly. His skin was cold. "Here you go," I said softly. "Be careful, it's hot." He wrapped his hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into them. "Thanks, Sarah." We stood there in silence for a moment, the only sounds the crackling fire and the distant drumming of the rain, which seemed to be easing slightly now. The awkwardness I'd felt initially was morphing into a different kind of tension, a quiet anticipation, a sense that something significant was about to be shared. I settled back onto the sofa, gesturing for him to take the armchair opposite me. He sank into it, the old springs groaning faintly under his weight. He took a tentative sip of the tea, his gaze still fixed on the fire. I waited, giving him space, letting the silence stretch. I sensed he needed to gather himself to find the words for whatever had brought him to my doorstep on this wild night. There was a story here. I knew it, one that went far beyond simply getting caught in the rain. And for some reason, he had chosen to bring that story to me. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, not exactly. It felt weighted, expectant. Alex cradled the mug like a lifeline, his knuckles white. He took another sip, then finally lifted his eyes to meet mine. The vulnerability I saw there was startling. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice low. "This is really weird, me just showing up like this. I probably should have called," but he trailed off, shrugging helplessly. "It's all right, Alex," I reassured him gently. "You're always welcome here, you know that. But I admit I am a little surprised. Is everything okay? You seem upset." He drew a deep breath, letting it out slowly, like he was steeling himself. "Yeah, no, not really. Okay, I guess." He looked away again, focusing on a spot somewhere over my shoulder. "I drove down from school today, didn't tell anyone I was coming." My concern deepened. He went to college nearly 4 hours away. Driving that far unannounced in this weather? 4 hours. Hex, what happened? He ran a hand through his still damp hair, leaving streaks where the water hadn't fully dried. "It's complicated stuff at school, stuff at home." He paused, seemed to struggle for the right words. "My parents. We had a fight over the phone about my major again, about what I'm supposed to be doing with my life." The age-old pressure. I remembered Michael going through similar anxieties, though perhaps not to this extent. "They want me to stick with engineering," Alex continued, his voice tightening. "It's practical, it's secure, it's what my dad did, but I hate it, Sarah. I absolutely hate it. Every class feels like torture, unfailing a couple of them. Haven't told them that yet." He looked down into his mug. "I tried telling them I wanted to switch maybe to art history or even just liberal arts, figure things out. They wouldn't hear it. Dad called it a waste of time and money. Mom just cried, asked why I wanted to throw my future away." His shoulders sagged. It got pretty heated. I ended up just hanging up on them. And then I just got in my car and started driving. And you ended up here? I asked softly, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. Why my house? He didn't live in this town anymore. His parents had moved across the state a few years back. He nodded, looking slightly ashamed. Yeah, I don't know why, really. I just drove. Didn't want to go home. Couldn't face them. Couldn't face going back to my dorm either. I was just driving south. And I guess I ended up on familiar roads. I saw the turnoff for this town and I just turned. I drove past the old high school, past the park where we used to hang out. He paused, taking another sip of tea, and then I found myself on your street. I parked down the block for almost an hour, just sitting there in the rain looking at your house, trying to figure out what I was doing. He finally looked directly at me, his expression earnest, almost pleading. I remembered how you used to talk to Michael and me. Not like a kid, you actually listened. You gave advice, but you didn't judge. Remember when Michael was freaking out about college applications? You just sat with him, helped him sort through it all. My parents just yelled. A faint memory surfaced, sitting at the kitchen table with Michael, papers spread everywhere, both of us tired but working through it. Alex had been there too, ostensibly doing homework, but mostly just being present, absorbing the calm. I hadn't realized it had made such an impression. I just felt like maybe he'd understand. He finished quietly, his gaze dropping back to his hands. I didn't know who else I could talk to who might actually get it. My heart ached for him. He looked so young, so lost, grappling with expectations that felt suffocating. It wasn't just about changing majors. It was about finding his own path, something his parents, in their own way, were making incredibly difficult. Oh, Alex, I said, my voice full of warmth. Of course I understand. Or at least I can try. Those pressures are immense, especially when you feel like you're disappointing the people you love. I leaned forward slightly. Choosing your own way, especially when it diverges from what's expected, takes incredible courage. It doesn't sound like a waste of time to me. It sounds like you're trying to be true to yourself. His eyes flickered up, meeting mine again. There was a glimmer of something, relief maybe in their depths. You really think so? I do, I affirmed. Your dad's path worked for him, but that doesn't automatically make it the right one for you. And hating what you study? That's a clear sign something needs to change. Engineering is fantastic if it fits, but if it doesn't, I let the sentence hang. He seemed to absorb my words, mulling them over. The tension in his shoulders eased a fraction more. They just don't see it, he said, frustration creeping back into his voice. They think I'm being lazy or scared of hard work. It's not that I'd work hard at something I cared about, but calculations and stress dynamics, it just feels empty, meaningless, like I'm just going through the motions for them, he sighed. And art history. Dad laughed when I mentioned it, said artists starve. There are practical applications for almost any field if you look for them. I countered gently. Museum curators, historians, preservationists, educators, writers, and beyond that there's value in studying something simply because it feeds your soul, because it makes you feel alive and engaged with the world. That has worth, Alex, even if it doesn't come with a guaranteed 6-figure salary straight out of college. He listened intently, nodding slowly. I wish they could hear that, or hear it from you, maybe. He gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. Instead, I just yelled back and ran away like a kid. You didn't run away, I corrected. You needed space to think away from the conflict. That's not childish. That's self-preservation. Sometimes you need to step out of the storm to see clearly. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. This disagreement with your parents, it's not just about your major, is it? It sounds like it's touching on something deeper, about being seen and accepted for who you are, not who they want you to be. Alex looked startled, as if I'd voiced a thought he hadn't quite dared to articulate himself. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, searching for words. The air between us felt charged, not with awkwardness anymore, but with the potential for real understanding. He had come here seeking refuge, and perhaps unknowingly seeking permission to feel what he was feeling. The rain had softened to a gentle drumming on the roof, a soothing backdrop to the quiet intensity unfolding in my living room. The fire cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate cocoon against the dark world outside. He had driven hours, navigated a storm both literal and metaphorical, to sit in this room, sharing a vulnerability he clearly felt unable to express elsewhere. It was unexpected, deeply so, but there was a rightness to it, a strange sense of purpose in this late-night, rain-soaked encounter. Alex took another slow sip of his tea, seeming to gather his thoughts. The warmth of the mug seemed to be doing its job. The shivering had stopped, and a little color had returned to his face. He still looked weary, burdened, but the frantic edge I'd seen when he first arrived had softened. "You're right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It is deeper than just the classes. It feels like if I don't do this, the engineering thing, then I'm letting them down completely. Like their approval hinges on me following this specific plan they laid out." He leaned his head back against the armchair, staring up at the ceiling. "It's been like this for a while, really. High school. Choosing which colleges to apply to. Michael was lucky. Your husband," he hesitated, glancing at the photo on the mantelpiece where my late husband David stood beaming beside a teenage Michael. "He was always so supportive of whatever Michael wanted to do, wasn't he? And you too?" I nodded, a familiar ache mixing with warmth at the mention of David. "We tried," I said softly. "We always believed that Michael needed to find his own passion. Pushing him into something wouldn't have made him happy. And ultimately, isn't that what parents want? For their kids to be happy, fulfilled?" "That's what I thought," Alex said, his gaze drifting back to the fire. "But my parents, I think they equate happiness with financial security above all else. They struggled when they were younger. Dad always tells me the stories. He sees engineering as this guaranteed safe harbor, and anything else feels like setting sail in a leaky boat. Their fear comes from a place of love. Alex," I suggested gently, "even if it feels like pressure or disapproval right now, they want to protect you from the struggles they faced. The problem is their idea of protection might be suffocating your spirit." He turned his head, looking at me with an intensity that surprised me. "That's exactly how it feels. Suffocating, like I can't breathe. And I feel so guilty for feeling that way because they've given me so much paid for college. You can be grateful for what they've given you and still disagree with their vision for your future." I assured him those feelings aren't mutually exclusive. It's okay to want something different for yourself. Your life is yours to live, Alex, not theirs, not mine, not even Michael's, yours. I decided to share something personal, feeling it might help bridge the gap, show him he wasn't alone in facing expectations. "You know, I began swirling the tea in my own mug before I met David. Before I even thought about settling down or having Michael, I wanted to be a photographer. I spent a year after high school working odd jobs, saving every penny for a good camera and darkroom supplies. My parents were less than thrilled. I smiled faintly at the memory. They pictured me becoming a teacher or maybe a nurse, something stable, practical. Photography seemed like a pipe dream to them, irresponsible." Alex listened, his attention fully captured. "What happened?" he asked. "Well, I didn't become a world-famous photographer," I chuckled softly. "Life took different turns. I met David. We fell in love. We decided to start a family. Priorities shifted." But I leaned forward slightly, meeting his gaze. I never regretted that time exploring something I was passionate about. It taught me things about myself, about seeing the world differently. And I kept it up as a hobby for years. It enriched my life, even if it wasn't my career. I paused, letting the story sink in. "Maybe your path won't be a straight line, Alex. Maybe you'll explore art history. Maybe it will lead somewhere unexpected. Maybe it will just be something that enriches your understanding of the world while you figure out the next step. The point is, it's your exploration to undertake. Denying yourself that exploration because you're afraid of disappointing someone else, that's a heavy price to pay." He was quiet for a long moment, absorbing my words. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fire. Then he let out a long breath, a sigh that seemed to release some of the tension coiled inside him. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Really? Thank you. Hearing that, it helps more than you know." He looked down at his hands again, then back at me, a newfound resolve firming his jaw. "I know I need to talk to them again properly. Not yelling over the phone, but really talk. Try to make them understand." "That sounds like a good plan," I agreed. "Maybe write down your thoughts first. Sometimes getting it clear in your own head makes it easier to explain calmly. Yeah, maybe, he conceded. I still don't know exactly what I want to do instead of engineering. But I know I can't continue like this. It's making me miserable. Knowing what you don't want is often the first step to figuring out what you do want. I offered. Give yourself permission to not have all the answers right now. A comfortable silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different, easier. The charged emotion had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of connection, of mutual understanding. He had come here burdened and uncertain, seeking something he couldn't quite name, and had found, not answers perhaps, but validation, permission to trust his own feelings. It felt strangely intimate, sharing this moment of vulnerability with my son's friend, a young man on the cusp of adulthood, wrestling with timeless questions. It reminded me of conversations with Michael, yet it was distinct. This was Alex's struggle, his journey, and I felt a quiet sense of honor that he had trusted me enough to share it. The rain outside had stopped completely now. The only sound was the gentle hiss and pop of the embers in the fireplace. The storm had passed, both outside and, it seemed, within the young man sitting across from me. He looked exhausted but peaceful. The lost look in his eyes had been replaced by a weary thoughtfulness. He finished his tea, placing the empty mug carefully on the coaster on the side table. Alex stretched, a long, audible sigh escaping him as he did. Wow, he said, rubbing his eyes. I feel lighter. It's like I've been carrying this huge weight around for months, pretending it wasn't there. He looked at me, a genuine, warm smile finally reaching his eyes. I can't thank you enough, Sarah, for letting me barge in for the tea, for listening, for not thinking I'm crazy or ungrateful. You're neither crazy nor ungrateful, Alex, I replied sincerely. You're just figuring things out. Everyone goes through it one way or another. We all have expectations placed upon us, and we all have to learn how to navigate them while staying true to ourselves. It's part of growing up, and honestly, it never entirely stops. I smiled back at him. I'm glad you felt you could come here. Really? He stood up, stretching again. I should probably head out, let you get back to your evening. I've taken up enough of your time. He glanced towards the hallway where his damp jacket still hung. Are you sure you should be driving again tonight? I asked, concerned, returning. You've driven a long way, you're tired, and you've been through an emotional ringer. The roads might still be slick. He considered this for a moment. Yeah, you're probably right, he admitted. I wasn't really thinking straight when I drove down here. I guess I could find a cheap motel nearby. Don't be silly, I said immediately, standing up too. Michael's room is just sitting there empty. The bed's made up. You can stay here tonight, get a proper night's sleep, have some breakfast in the morning, and figure out your next move with a clear head. He looked surprised, then hesitant. Oh no, Sarah, I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition at all. I cut him off gently but firmly. Honestly, Alex, it would probably make me feel better knowing you're safe here instead of driving exhausted or staying in some random motel. Consider it looking out for Michael's friend. I saw the internal debate on his face, but exhaustion and the logic of my offer seemed to win out. Okay, he conceded, relief washing over his features. Okay, thank you, that's incredibly kind. It's settled then, I said, feeling a sense of closure to the immediate crisis. Let me grab you some fresh towels. The bathroom is just down the hall. You remember where everything is. As I went to the linen closet again, I felt a quiet satisfaction. This unexpected visit, born of distress, had transformed into something else entirely. A moment of connection, of offering sanctuary not just physically from the storm, but emotionally too. It felt good to be needed to offer comfort, especially with Michael so far away. It filled a little bit of the quiet emptiness I often felt in the house. When I came back, Alex was looking at the photos on the mantelpiece again. A soft expression on his face as he gazed at a picture of him and Michael, arms slung around each other's shoulders, grinning after winning some high school football game. Simpler times, huh? He murmured, almost to himself. In some ways, I agreed, handing him the towels. But every stage has its own challenges and its own rewards. You'll navigate this one too. He turned from the photos, meeting my eyes. Thanks to you, I feel a little more like I can. He took the towels. Well, I guess I'll head up then. Seriously, Sarah, thank you for everything. Get some rest, Alex, I said warmly. We can talk more in the morning if you like. Or not. No pressure. He nodded, gave me one last grateful smile, and headed up the familiar staircase towards Michael's old room. I listened to his footsteps receding, the soft click as he closed the bedroom door. The house settled back into quietness, but it felt different now, less empty, less hollow. I went around the living room, tiddying up the mugs, plumping the cushions. I turned off the television, which had long since faded to a blank screen. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting a warm, soft light. I stood there for a few moments, looking into the dying flames, reflecting on the past couple of hours. A young man I hadn't seen in years, my son's friend, had shown up on my doorstep, lost and seeking refuge. He hadn't come seeking romance or anything untoward, despite what a sensational headline might imply. He'd come seeking understanding, connection, a safe harbor in his personal storm. And I'd been able to provide that. It was a simple thing, perhaps, listening, offering tea, sharing a bit of my own experience, offering a bed for the night, but it felt significant. It was a reminder that connections exist in unexpected places, that kindness matters, that listening without judgment can be a powerful gift. It also brought my own life into focus. My quiet evenings, my routines, the space left by Michael's absence and David's passing, offering comfort to Alex had in a way comforted me too. It showed me I still had something to offer, a role to play beyond just Michael's mom. It was a moment of personal discovery, born from an unexpected knock on the door on a rainy night. As I finally headed upstairs myself, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt earlier. The storm outside was over, and a different kind of storm, the one Alex carried, had begun to calm. And in the quiet aftermath, there was a sense of hope and growth for both of us.